Admiral Taman stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the blue planet below. Earth. That was what the humans called their home world. It looked peaceful from orbit, with white clouds swirling over green and brown continents. Taman had seen hundreds of worlds just like this one. He had conquered most of them. The Valtheric Empire stretched across 4,000 star systems. Every species they encountered either joined the Empire willingly or was forced to submit. Taman had never failed a conquest mission. He did not plan to start now. "Send the standard message," Taman ordered. His voice was calm and cold. His communications officer, a young woman named Hyejin, nodded and pressed several buttons on her console. The message went out in all known languages, translated by their advanced computers. It was simple: surrender or be destroyed. The Empire offered one chance. Only one. Taman expected the usual response. Some species begged for mercy. Others threatened war they could not win. A few stayed silent, hoping to be ignored, but the humans surprised him. The reply came in less than 10 minutes. "This is Earth Command," a calm male voice said through the speakers. "We accept your terms. We surrender unconditionally. Please send coordinates for the formal negotiation." Hyejin looked up at Taman with confusion on her face. "Admiral, they just gave up." "No questions. No demands, nothing," Taman frowned. Something felt wrong. In his 30 years of military service, he had never seen a species surrender this quickly. Even primitive worlds put up some kind of fight, even if it was just angry messages and empty threats. "Run a full scan of the planet," Taman said. "Check for hidden weapons, fleet movements, anything unusual." His science team worked for an hour. They found nothing threatening. Earth had a small fleet of ships, but they were all docked at orbital stations. No weapons charged. No shields active. The planet seemed completely defenseless. "Perhaps they are simply intelligent enough to recognize superior force," said Commander Mirai, the ship's intelligence officer. She was older than most of the crew, with gray hair and sharp eyes. "Not every species chooses pointless death." "Maybe," Taman said, but he did not believe it. 3 days later, a small human shuttle approached the Valtheric flagship. Taman stood in the main docking bay with an honor guard of 20 soldiers. All of them carried weapons just in case this was some kind of trick. The shuttle door opened. 5 humans stepped out. They looked remarkably similar to Valtheric people. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. Their skin was a bit darker, their faces slightly different but not so alien as many species. They wore simple gray uniforms with no weapons visible. What caught Taman's attention immediately were the tattoos. Every human had a black number tattooed on their left forearm. The man leading the group had the number 47. The woman next to him had 1203. The others had numbers ranging from 34 to 291. "I am Ambassador Junho, the lead," human said in perfect Valtheric language. "On behalf of Earth and humanity, I formally surrender our world to the Valtheric Empire." Taman studied the man carefully. Junho looked to be in his mid-40s with black hair starting to gray at the temples. His eyes were dark and calm. Too calm. This was a man who had seen terrible things and learned not to react to them. "Your surrender is accepted," Taman said. "What are those numbers on your arms?" Junho glanced down at his tattoo as if he had forgotten it was there. "These? They are just counts. Personal records. Nothing that concerns the Empire. I decide what concerns the Empire," Taman said coldly. "What do the numbers count?" The 5 humans exchanged glances. Something passed between them, some silent communication. Finally, Junho spoke. "They count how many times we have experienced certain events. It is a human custom. Nothing more. It was a lie." Taman knew lies when he heard them, but he had conquered the planet. He had time to discover the truth. "Very well," Taman said. "You will provide us with a complete list of your military assets, your industrial capacity, and your population centers. Occupation forces will land within 24 hours. "Of course," Junho said. "We will cooperate fully." He paused, and for just a moment something like sadness crossed his face. "Admiral, I hope you never have to understand what these numbers really mean, for your sake and for the sake of your people." Before Taman could respond, the humans bowed respectfully and returned to their shuttle. The occupation of Earth went smoothly. Too smoothly. Valtheric troops landed at major cities across the planet. They encountered no resistance. Humans simply went about their daily lives. accepting the Empire's rule as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Taemin assigned Mirai to investigate the mysterious tattoos. She interviewed hundreds of humans. They all gave the same vague answers. The numbers were personal. The numbers were private. The numbers did not matter to the Empire. 1 week into the occupation, Hyejin came to Taemin's office with a strange expression on her face. "Admiral, I think you should see this," she said. She placed a data tablet on his desk. It showed surveillance footage from multiple cities across Earth. Thousands of humans were visible in the recordings. Hyejin had isolated and enhanced specific individuals. "Watch their tattoos," she said. Taemin watched. At first he saw nothing unusual. Then Hyejin advanced the footage by several days. The numbers changed. A man with 234 on his arm now showed 235. A woman with 89 now had 90. "The tattoos are not permanent markings," Hyejin explained. "They update somehow. We do not know how. But the numbers increase over time." "Increase based on what?" Taemin demanded. "We do not know." The humans refused to explain. "But Admiral," Hyejin hesitated, "I have been analyzing the rate of change. The numbers increase most rapidly in areas where there have been accidents, conflicts, or natural disasters. Places where humans have died." A cold feeling settled in Taemin's stomach. "Show me." Hyejin pulled up another file. It showed a human named Do-hyun, a factory worker in a city called Seoul. His tattoo read 892. 3 days ago, there had been an industrial accident at his workplace. 17 humans died, including Do-hyun. The Valtheric occupation authorities had confirmed the deaths and collected the bodies for cremation, as was standard procedure. But yesterday, surveillance cameras captured Do-hyun walking through a checkpoint near his home. His tattoo now read 893. "This is impossible," Taemin said quietly. "I thought so too," Hyejin said. "So I checked the body we recovered from the accident. We still have it in storage. I ran genetic comparison. It is definitely Do-hyun. The body is his. But he is also alive." Taemin stood up from his chair and walked to the window. Below, Earth spread out in all its beauty. Millions of humans lived on that planet, all of them bearing numbered tattoos, all of them hiding some terrible secret. "Find this Do-hyun," Taemin ordered. "Bring him to me alive. I want answers." "Yes, Admiral," Hyejin said. She turned to leave, then paused. "Sir, what if the human surrender was not weakness? What if it was something else?" "What do you mean?" "What if they surrendered because they knew we could not actually defeat them?" Taemin had no answer to that question, but deep inside he feared Hyejin might be right. The trap had already closed around them. They just did not know it yet. Do-hyun sat in the interrogation room with his hands folded on the metal table. He looked tired but not afraid. Taemin studied him through the one-way glass before entering. The man was in his 30s with rough hands that showed years of factory work. His tattoo clearly displayed the number 893. Taemin entered the room and sat across from Do-hyun. 2 guards stood by the door, their weapons ready. "You died 3 days ago," Taemin said without introduction. "We have your body in storage, yet here you sit. Explain." Do-hyun sighed deeply as if he had been dreading this conversation. "I told my supervisor this would happen. I told Junho this would happen, but nobody listens. Answer my question." "I did die," Do-hyun said simply. "A support beam fell on me, crushed my chest. I remember everything. The pain, the darkness, the end. Then I woke up 18 hours later in a resurrection facility beneath the city." Taemin leaned back in his chair. "Resurrection? You expect me to believe that?" "I do not care what you believe, Admiral. It is the truth. Every human on Earth is connected to a network of resurrection facilities. When we die, we come back. Our tattoos count how many times it has happened." The casual way Do-hyun spoke about dying disturbed Taemin more than the claim itself. "This is impossible. Our best scientists have studied death for thousands of years. Once life ends, it ends. For your species, maybe," Do-hyun said. "Not for us. Not anymore." Taemin called in his medical team. They spent 6 hours examining Do-hyun. The results were impossible to deny. His body contained cellular markers consistent with recent death and decay. His tissues showed signs of having been dead for approximately 18 hours before somehow reactivating. The genetic match to the body in storage was perfect. "How?" Taemin demanded when he read the reports. 200 years ago, we faced extinction," Do-hyun explained. "Something came through a tear in space. Creatures that existed in dimensions we barely understood. They killed us by the billions. Nothing we tried worked. We were losing, so you developed this resurrection technology? We had no choice. Our greatest scientists worked for 50 years. They built the facilities. They cracked the secret of consciousness transfer. They forced evolution beyond death. The cost would... Do-hyun paused, his eyes distant. The cost was terrible, but we survived. Taemin ordered Mirai to investigate these claims. She assembled a team of researchers and began digging through human databases. What they found horrified them. The historical records from 200 years ago were partially corrupted, but enough remained to paint a picture. Humanity had fought a war against something they called the breach entities. The war lasted 53 years. Human casualties exceeded 4 billion. Final victory came not through defeating the entities, but through closing the dimensional tear they emerged from. But the real horror was in the classified files Mirai eventually cracked, files about the resurrection program. The early tests killed volunteers hundreds of times before the process stabilized. Children as young as 5 were put through death and resurrection cycles to build psychological resistance. Entire generations grew up knowing that death was temporary but pain was forever. The suicide rate during the first generation of resurrections was 70%. The second generation was 40%. By the third generation, humans had adapted. They had accepted their new reality. They turned their entire species into immortal soldiers, Mirai said to Taemin in his office. Her hand shook as she held the reports. They did it to their children, Admiral. They made a whole civilization that cannot die. Taemin read through the files in silence. One document caught his attention. It was a psychological evaluation of a human named Sora, who served in their military. Her tattoo number was 127. Haijin had interviewed Sora during the early days of occupation. Taemin ordered the young woman brought to his flagship. Sora arrived the next day. She was 24 years old, short and thin with black hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her tattoo read 127. She stood at attention before Taemin's desk but did not look afraid. Sit, Taemin said. Sora sat. You have died 127 times, Taemin said. You're only 24 years old. How is that possible? Training, Sora said. I joined the military at 16. Basic training includes controlled death resurrection cycles, helps build mental resistance, makes you a better soldier. They killed you during training? Yes, sir. 37 times in the first year. Different methods. Bullet wounds, poison, vacuum exposure, burning. You need to experience every type of death so you do not panic when it happens in real situations. Taemin felt sick. And the other 90 deaths? Combat exercises, accidents, a few real emergencies. There was a fire in my barracks 2 years ago. Killed 19 of us. We were back the next day. Sora spoke as if she were discussing the weather. Does it hurt? For the first time, emotion crossed Sora's face. Every time, sir. Dying hurts. Coming back hurts worse. Your consciousness is ripped apart and put back together. You remember everything. The first death changes you. By the 10th, you are numb. By the 100th, you are something else. What are you? Sora met his eyes. We are survivors, Admiral. Nothing more. Nothing less. Taemin dismissed her and sat alone in his office for a long time. Outside his window, Earth turned slowly in the darkness of space. Millions of humans down there, all of them marked with numbers. All of them carrying the memories of multiple deaths. 3 weeks into the occupation, a problem arose in the human settlement of Busan. A group of young humans refused to follow Valtheric labor directives. The local commander, a lieutenant named Ji-won, decided to make an example. She ordered her troops to execute 47 humans in the town square. The executions were carried out with standard plasma rifles. Quick and efficient. The bodies fell and did not move. Ji-won felt satisfied that order had been restored. 2 days later, Taemin received an urgent report from Busan. All 47 executed humans had returned. They walked out of underground facilities and went back to their homes. Their tattoos had each increased by 1. They showed no anger, no desire for revenge. They simply continued their lives. Ji-won was transferred back to the flagship in disgrace. But the damage was done. Across Earth, Valtheric soldiers began to understand what they were facing. You could not threaten people who could not permanently die. You could not control them with fear of death. The human population remained calm and cooperative. But their patients felt different now. They were not afraid. They were waiting. Taman sent an urgent message to Valtheric High Command. He explained everything they had learned about human resurrection capabilities. He recommended immediate withdrawal from the Sol system. The reply came from Emperor Kyung-hee herself. Immortality is scientifically impossible. This is clearly advanced medical technology, not true resurrection. Continue the occupation. Destroy the resurrection facilities if they cause problems. The Valtheric Empire does not retreat. Taman read the message 3 times. Then he called his senior staff together. Prepare detailed scans of every human city, he ordered. Find every resurrection facility. Map them all. I want to know what we are really dealing with. The scans took a week. What they revealed made Taman's blood run cold. Every major human city had massive underground complexes. The facilities used power sources that made Valtheric fusion reactors look like primitive batteries. The quantum computer arrays were beyond anything the Empire had developed. At the center of each facility were thousands of resurrection chambers, all connected to some kind of consciousness storage network. But the most disturbing discovery was the age of the facilities. They were not new. Some were 200 years old, dating to the end of the Breach War, but others were older, much older, dating back 400 years. They were researching this before the war, Mirai said quietly. The invasion just gave them a reason to finish it. Taman stood in the scan analysis room staring at the holographic map of Earth. Red dots marked each resurrection facility. There were thousands of them, millions of resurrection chambers. We have not conquered Earth, Taman said. We are occupying a fortress we do not understand. And every day we stay here, we are walking deeper into a trap. Emperor Kyung-hee listened to Taman's report in silence. Her image flickered on the holographic display, transmitted across hundreds of light years from the Valtheric homeworld. She was old for their species, nearly 200 years, with silver hair and eyes that had seen the rise of their empire from 10 systems to 4,000. You are telling me, she said slowly, that every human on Earth is immortal. Not immortal in the traditional sense, Taman corrected carefully. They can die, but they resurrect within hours. We have confirmed this hundreds of times now. It is not a trick, it is real, impossible. That is what I said, Your Majesty. But the evidence is overwhelming. We have medical scans, we have witnessed resurrections, we have the facilities mapped. This is happening. Kyung-hee was quiet for a long moment. Behind her, Taman could see advisors and generals whispering urgently to each other. Finally, she spoke. Then we will destroy the facilities. Without them, the humans cannot resurrect. Simple. Your Majesty, there are thousands of facilities. They are built deep underground, reinforced with materials we cannot easily penetrate. Destroying them all would require— I do not care what it requires, Kyung-hee interrupted. The Valtheric Empire does not surrender territory we have claimed. Destroy the facilities. Kill the humans. Burn their cities if necessary. Show them that their trick technology cannot save them from determined force. The transmission ended before Taman could respond. Taman stood alone on his bridge, staring at the dead hologram projector. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. They had all heard the Emperor's orders. Admiral, Hyejin said softly, what do we do? Taman thought about Do-hyun, who had died 893 times. He thought about Sora, who spoke about death like it was a common inconvenience. He thought about Junho's warning that first day. We hope you never have to understand what the numbers mean. Follow orders, Taman said. Prepare the fleet for strike operations against the resurrection facilities. But do it slowly. Give me time to think. But events moved faster than Taman could plan. Lieutenant Ji-won, eager to redeem herself after her previous failure, organized an assault on a resurrection facility in the city called Shanghai. She took 200 soldiers and heavy weapons. They breached the facility and began setting demolition charges on the resurrection chambers. That was when the humans finally stopped being patient. The facility's security systems activated. Humans who had been cooperative and passive for weeks suddenly became efficient killers. They used weapons hidden in the facility walls, traps built into the corridors, and tactics that spoke of centuries of combat experience. Ji-won's force was slaughtered. All 200 soldiers died in less than an hour, but before the last Valtheric soldier fell, they transmitted footage back to the flagship. Taman watched the recordings with growing horror. The humans fought like they had nothing to lose, because they did not. They charged through gunfire, used their own bodies as shields, and traded their lives freely to stop the Valtheric soldiers from reaching the resurrection chambers. Taman counted 37 human deaths in the footage. 3 days later, all 37 were back, walking the streets of Shanghai with their tattoos increased by 1. 0 Valtheric survivors. 37 human resurrections. The message was clear. Touch the facilities and humans would fight. That night, Junho requested a meeting with Taman. The Admiral agreed, curious what the human ambassador would say now that blood had been spilled. They met in a neutral conference room. Yunyu arrived alone, his tattoo still reading 847. He looked tired. I warned you, Junho said as he sat down. Your people killed 200 of my soldiers. Your people tried to destroy a resurrection facility. What did you expect us to do? Let you take away our immortality? That facility contains 50,000 resurrection chambers, Admiral. 50,000 connections to human consciousness. You tried to murder 50,000 people permanently. They were not in the chambers. They were not dead. The chambers are not just for the dead, Junho said. They are part of us. Quantum entanglement links every human to their designated chamber. Destroy the chamber, destroy the link. We would die and stay dead. So yes, we fought back. And we will fight every time you threaten the facilities. Taman leaned forward. Tell me the truth, all of it. I am tired of discovering pieces. Junho was silent for a long time. Finally, he began to speak. 400 years ago, we were like any other species. We lived, we died, we accepted it. Then the breach opened. Things came through. Things that did not belong in our dimension. They killed us easily. Billions died in the first year. The war you mentioned before? Yes, but the war itself was not the worst part. The worst part was what we did to survive it. Our scientists developed the resurrection technology. But making it work required testing. Lots of testing. Volunteers died dozens of times while we perfected the process. Some went insane. Some begged us to let them stay dead. We did not listen. We needed the technology to work. Junho paused, his face dark with memory. When we finally stabilized the resurrection process, we had a new problem. Normal humans could not handle multiple deaths. The psychological trauma was too great, so we started training programs. Children were put through controlled death cycles starting at age 5. We conditioned an entire generation to accept dying as normal. That is monstrous, Taman said quietly. Yes, Junho agreed. It was monstrous, but it worked. By the 3rd generation, humans could die and resurrect with minimal psychological damage. We won the war. We closed the breach. We survived. At what cost? Everything, Junho said. We lost our innocence. We lost our humanity. We became something else. Look at my tattoo, Admiral. 847. I have died 847 times. I remember every single death. The first time when I was 7 years old during training. They drowned me in a controlled environment. I remember the water filling my lungs. I remember the darkness. I remember waking up in the resurrection chamber screaming. Taman felt cold. You were 7 years old? All children went through it. We had no choice. The breach entities could kill us anytime, anywhere. We needed to be ready, so we killed our own children over and over until they stopped being afraid of death, until death became just another part of life. And now? Now we are a civilization of ghosts, Admiral. Every human over the age of 20 has died at least a dozen times. Most have died far more. We do not fear your weapons. We do not fear your threats. We have experienced every horror your empire can imagine and worse. So when you came to conquer us, we surrendered, because we knew you could not really win. You can occupy our cities. You can kill us, but we will just keep coming back, forever. Taman stood and walked to the window. Earth turned below, beautiful and terrible. The Emperor has ordered us to destroy all resurrection facilities, to exterminate your species completely. Then you will lose your fleet, Junho said simply. We have weapons you have not seen yet. Weapons we built to fight the breach entities. We kept them hidden because we did not want to fight you. But if you threaten our existence, we will use them. And Admiral, we are very, very good at killing things. We have had 200 years to practice on enemies much worse than you. Is that a threat? No, Junho said. It is a fact. We offered you mercy. We surrendered peacefully. We cooperated with your occupation. But if you try to destroy the facilities, if you try to end us permanently, we will show you what humanity really is. We will show you what 200 years of dying has taught us. Junho stood and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back. I have a daughter, Junho said. She is 9 years old. Her tattoo reads 12. 12 deaths in 9 years. Training, accidents, one real emergency during a school field trip. She came home from each one and told me about it over dinner. I hugged her and told her she was brave. That is what we have become, Admiral. A species that treats child death as routine. Is that what you want to fight? Shunyo left. Taemin remained at the window for hours. The next day, the Emperor sent reinforcements. 4 more conquest fleets entered the Sol system. 10,000 warships ready to destroy Earth completely if necessary. Humans across the planet looked up at the sky and saw the ships gathering. They did not panic. They did not flee. They simply went to their homes, kissed their families, and waited. Taemin knew what was coming. Humanity had been patient. They had been merciful. But patience had limits. Mercy had limits. The war was about to begin, and Taemin feared that the Valtheric Empire had made a terrible, fatal mistake. The Valtheric Second Fleet arrived first, commanded by Admiral Gunwoo, a man known for his ruthless efficiency. He had pacified 12 rebellious worlds in his career. He looked at Earth with contempt. Admiral Taemin, Gunwoo said over the communication channel, "The Emperor believes you have grown soft. She has sent me to finish this operation properly. Stand aside." Taemin wanted to argue, but orders were orders. He moved his fleet to a supporting position and watched as Gunwoo took command of the operation. Gunwoo wasted no time. He identified the 10 largest resurrection facilities on Earth and ordered simultaneous orbital bombardment. The strikes would come at dawn when most humans would be asleep. Maximum casualties. Maximum fear. The bombardment began at exactly 0600 Earth time. Plasma beams lanced down from orbit, striking the cities of Tokyo, Delhi, Lagos, Mexico City, and 6 others. The destruction was total. Buildings vaporized. Streets melted. The resurrection facilities buried deep underground were hit with enough force to crack the planetary crust. Taemin watched the sensor readings. Estimated human casualties, 43 million. That will teach them, Gunwoo said with satisfaction. When they realize we can destroy their facilities, they will beg for mercy. But something was wrong. Taemin saw it in the energy readings. The resurrection facilities had not been destroyed. The bombardment had damaged surface structures, killed millions of humans, but the facilities themselves were intact. They were built deeper than Valtheric scans had indicated, shielded by materials that absorbed plasma energy. And then Earth responded. The planet's surface opened, not just in the bombed cities, but everywhere. Thousands of hidden installations revealed themselves. Taemin saw weapons platforms rise from the oceans. Cannons emerge from mountains, and satellites that had pretended to be debris suddenly activated. All ships, evasive action. Taemin shouted into the fleet communication channel, but it was too late for some ships. Earth's weapons fired. The technology was unlike anything Taemin had seen. Beams of compressed quantum energy, missiles that phased through shields, electromagnetic pulses that disabled entire ships. The humans had hidden an entire military arsenal, built to fight extra-dimensional horrors, and they were using it now. Gunwoo's flagship took a direct hit. The shields failed. The hull breached. Gunwoo died along with 4,000 crew members. His ship broke apart in orbit, pieces falling toward Earth like burning stars. The battle lasted 3 days. Human tactics were insane by normal military standards. Their pilots flew ships directly into Valtheric cruisers, destroying both vessels. Their soldiers launched from planetary cannons in small pods, boarding Valtheric ships through breached hulls, fighting room by room until they were killed, then resurrecting and doing it again. Taemin watched a single human woman, identified as Nari, die 17 times in boarding actions against his fleet. Each time she resurrected and launched again within 6 hours. Her tattoo, which had started at 7392, climbed steadily toward 7410. They were not fighting to win individual battles. They were fighting to exhaust the enemy. Every Valtheric death was permanent. Every human death was temporary. The mathematics were brutal and simple. Given enough time, humanity would win by attrition. On the ground, things were worse. Valtheric occupation forces found themselves fighting an enemy that used suicide tactics without hesitation. Human soldiers would trigger explosives while standing in groups of Valtheric troops. They would charge into gunfire to create openings for others. They would deliberately sacrifice themselves to learn enemy positions and tactics, then resurrect and share that knowledge. Commander Mirai, analyzing the battle patterns from the flagship, came to a horrifying conclusion. Admiral, they are not just fighting. They are learning. Every death teaches them something. Every resurrection makes them more dangerous. This is not a war. This is evolution in real time. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th Valtheric fleets arrived over the next week. Combined, the Empire had committed over 10,000 warships to the Sol system. Emperor Kyung-hee sent a message to all fleet commanders. Humanity must be exterminated. Use all weapons. Destroy the planet if necessary. The Valtheric Empire cannot allow this threat to exist. Taemin knew what that meant. Planet-killer weapons. Weapons that could shatter a world, boil oceans, destroy all life. The Empire had used them before on worlds that refused to surrender. They were terrible final weapons. But before the order could be executed, something unexpected happened. Every communication channel, civilian and military, suddenly broadcast the same message. A woman's face appeared on every screen. She was perhaps 40 years old with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Her tattoo read 7445. I am Nari, she said calmly. I speak for the Eternal Guard, humanity's true leadership. You now know what we are. You know we cannot be killed permanently. You know we will resurrect and continue fighting until your fleet is destroyed. But I offer you one chance. Leave now. Return to your empire. We will not pursue you. We will not seek revenge. Just leave us in peace. If you do not leave, Nari continued, we will show you what 200 years of preparation has created. We will show you weapons designed to fight beings that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We will show you what immortal soldiers can accomplish when fighting for their survival. You cannot win this war. You can only lose it slowly or quickly. Choose. The transmission ended. Emperor Kyung-hee responded with an order to fire the planet-killer weapons. 10 massive warships, moved into position above Earth, each carried enough destructive power to crack a continent. Together they could destroy the entire planet. The weapons charged. Taemin watched the power readings climb. In 15 minutes, Earth would cease to exist. Then the moon exploded, not the entire moon. Just the dark side, the part facing away from Earth. Taemin had not known there was anything there. But apparently, humans had built something massive inside the moon itself, some kind of weapon or facility. What emerged from the moon made Taemin's blood turn to ice, a structure the size of a city, covered in weapons that glowed with power no known technology should generate. And from that structure came a beam of pure energy that cut through space like a knife through paper. 3 planet-killer ships simply ceased to exist. Not exploded, not destroyed. They were there one moment and gone the next, erased from reality by whatever that weapon had done. The remaining 7 planet killers tried to retreat. 2 made it. 5 were destroyed by Earth's surface weapons, which now fired at full capacity. The Valtheric fleet broke. Ships scattered, trying to escape Earth's weapons range. But human fighters pursued them relentlessly. Pilots who died simply resurrected and launched again in new ships. Taemin ordered a full retreat. Of the 10,000 ships that had entered the Sol system, fewer than 3,000 escaped. Valtheric casualties numbered over 2 million. Human casualties were much higher in number, over 4 billion dead. But every single one would resurrect. As Taemin's flagship limped away from Earth at maximum speed, a final message came from Nari. We tried to tell you, she said. Her face on the screen looked sad, not triumphant. We surrendered because we did not want this. We gave you every chance to leave peacefully. But you insisted on war. Now you understand. We are not humans as you know them. We are something else. Something that has looked into the abyss of death and learned to thrive there. Never return to our system. Never threaten us again. Because next time, we will not let any of you leave. The transmission ended. Taemin slumped in his command chair, exhausted and defeated. Around him, his crew worked silently, tending to damaged systems and wounded personnel. Admiral, Yejin said quietly, what do we tell the Emperor? Taemin looked at her with tired eyes. The truth. We attacked a species that cannot be conquered through military force. We learned why humanity surrendered without fighting, not because they were weak, but because they were merciful. And we threw that mercy away. 3 weeks later, all 4 billion dead humans had resurrected. They returned to their lives. Their tattoos increased by 1, and waited to see if the Valtheric Empire would be foolish enough to attack again. On Earth, children played in parks rebuilt over the craters. Workers repaired damaged buildings. Soldiers cleaned their weapons and stood down from high alert. Life continued as it always did because death could not stop them anymore. Humanity had won. But as Junho walked through the streets of his city, looking at the faces of people he knew, people he had watched die and return, he wondered if winning felt like victory when the cost was measured in billions of deaths, when survival meant accepting that death was normal, routine, expected. He looked at his daughter Minseo playing with her friends. Her tattoo read 13 now. She had died once during the battle when a building collapsed. She came back 6 hours later and went to school the next day. She never cried. She never complained. She just accepted it. That acceptance, Junho thought, was the real price they had paid. Not the deaths themselves, but the ability to accept them without grief. That was what they had become. That was what they had sacrificed to survive. And he wondered if the Valtheric Empire would ever truly understand what they had faced. Not just soldiers who could not die, but a civilization that had lost something essential about being alive. Taman returned to the Valtheric homeworld as a disgraced admiral. His fleet had been destroyed. His soldiers were dead. The greatest military operation in recent imperial history had ended in complete failure. He expected to be executed. Instead, Emperor Kyung-hee promoted him. "You survived," she said during their private meeting. "Out of 5 fleet admirals, only you brought ships home. Gunwoo died in the first hour of battle. The others fell within days. You retreated when you understood the fight could not be won. That shows wisdom, not cowardice." "Your Majesty, I failed the mission." "No," Kyung-hee said, and for the first time since Taman had known her, she looked old and tired. "I failed. I ignored your warnings. I sent our fleets to fight an enemy we did not understand. The responsibility is mine, not yours. Now I need you to help me understand what we faced, what humanity really is." Taman spent the next month writing a complete report on humanity. He included everything they had learned, every interview, every battle analysis. The report was thousands of pages long. When he finished, it became required reading for every member of the Valtheric High Command. The galaxy reacted to news of the Valtheric defeat with shock and fear. The Empire had seemed invincible. Now everyone knew that was not true. Some species saw this as an opportunity to rebel. Others simply tried to distance themselves from the Empire, fearing association would make them targets. But most species turned their attention to humanity with a mixture of terror and fascination. Word spread quickly about the resurrection technology, the numbered tattoos, the immortal soldiers. Diplomats wanted to meet with Earth. Scientists wanted to study their technology. Military planners wanted to either ally with humanity or find ways to defend against them. Humanity responded by closing their borders completely. No ships were allowed into the Sol system. No communication except through official diplomatic channels. Earth became isolated, watching the rest of the galaxy from a distance. 5 years passed. Taman, now High Admiral of the Valtheric military, received an unexpected message. Ambassador Junho invited him to a diplomatic meeting on a neutral station between Valtheric and human space. Taman accepted immediately. The station was small, just a meeting room and basic facilities. Taman arrived with a small security detail. Junho arrived alone. They met in a simple conference room. Junho looked older now, with more gray in his hair. His tattoo read 894. He had died 47 more times in the 5 years since the war. "Thank you for coming," Junho said. "I wanted to see you again," Taman replied honestly, "to understand if anything had changed." "Many things have changed. The galaxy fears us now. We are monsters in their stories. The species that defeated the great Valtheric Empire. The species that cannot die. Are you not pleased with that fear? It keeps you safe," Junho smiled sadly. "Fear is not safety, Admiral. Fear breeds desperate actions. Already we have intercepted 3 assassination attempts by other species. They used genetic weapons, quantum bombs, reality distortion devices, all trying to find a way to kill us permanently. Fear makes enemies of everyone. What do you want from me? From the Empire? Peace, real peace. We want to sign a formal treaty. The Empire will never attack human space again. We will never expand beyond our current systems. Both sides share technology for defense against extra-dimensional threats. We help each other survive without trying to dominate each other." Taman studied the human ambassador. "Why now?" "Because in 5 years we have had time to think, to understand what we became during the war with you. We killed 2 million Valtheric soldiers. We accepted 4 billion of our own deaths as acceptable casualties. That is monstrous, Admiral. We became the very thing we fear most. The thing we fought the breach entities to avoid becoming. Creatures for whom life has no value. But you won. Yes, Junho said quietly. We won, but at what cost? My daughter is 14 now. Her tattoo reads 31. 31 deaths in 14 years. She is a child, Admiral. A child who has died 31 times. And she treats it as normal. That is what we are now. What we did to ourselves to survive. Taman sat back in his chair. I have thought about your species every day for 5 years, trying to understand. I read psychological reports on what multiple deaths do to human minds. I studied your history. I interviewed the few humans who were captured during the war. And I have reached a conclusion. What conclusion? That you are the most tragic species in the galaxy. You found a way to defeat death, but in doing so you lost what makes life precious. Every other species knows that life is finite, temporary, valuable because it ends. But you cannot appreciate life because you know it will always come back. You are trapped in existence without the release of true death. Junho was quiet for a long moment. You understand us better than most humans understand themselves. Do you regret it? The resurrection technology? Every day. But I would do it again if I had to. Because the alternative was extinction. Better to be tragic survivors than noble corpses. The negotiations took 3 weeks. Both sides argued, compromised, and eventually reached an agreement. The Treaty of Sol was signed by Emperor Kyung-hee and the Human Leadership Council. The Valtheric Empire would never enter human space. Humanity would not expand beyond their current territories. Both sides would share defensive technology and provide mutual aid against extra-dimensional threats. On the day the treaty was signed, Taman walked through the station's observation deck. He looked out at the stars, thinking about everything that had happened. A small sound made him turn. A human child stood nearby looking out the window with wide eyes. The boy was perhaps 7 years old. His tattoo read 3, hello, Taman said gently. Hello, the boy replied. Are you the Valtheric Admiral? I am. My mom says you tried to kill us during the war. Taman felt cold shame. Yes, I did. I am sorry for that. The boy considered this seriously. It's okay. We came back. We always come back. He said it so simply, so matter-of-fact, as if death and resurrection were just normal parts of life. Does it hurt? Dying and coming back? Yes, the boy said. It hurts a lot. But my teacher says pain makes us strong. That if we can survive dying, we can survive anything. What is your name? Minsu. My dad works on the treaty team. He brought me here to see the signing. He says today is important, that we are making peace. Minsu reached into his pocket and pulled out a small flower, carefully preserved in a clear container. My teacher told us to give gifts to promote peace. This is from Earth. It is called a cherry blossom. Will you take it? Taman accepted the flower with shaking hands. This child, who had died and returned 3 times in 7 years, was offering him a symbol of peace. He did not know what to say. Thank you, Minsu, I will treasure this. The boy smiled and ran off to find his father. Taman stood alone holding the preserved flower, understanding finally what humanity had sacrificed. Their children could not be innocent. They had all died, all experienced the ultimate horror, all carried memories no child should have, and yet they still smiled. They still played. They still offered flowers to strangers. Taman returned to the Valtheric homeworld and placed the cherry blossom in a preservation case in his office. Over the years, it became famous. Visitors would come to see the flower from Earth, the gift from a child who had died 3 times. It reminded everyone who saw it of what the war had cost both sides. 10 years after the treaty, Taman retired from military service. He spent his final years writing and teaching about the human war. His message was simple. Some species would endure anything to survive. Some would break the laws of nature itself, and some victories were too horrible to celebrate. He never returned to Earth, but he corresponded regularly with Junho until the ambassador's death at age 78. Junho's final tattoo count was 1,247. In his last letter, he wrote, I have died 247 times and I remember everyone, but I also remember the sunrise over the ocean, my daughter's laughter, the taste of good food, the comfort of friendship. Life is still worth living even when death cannot end it. Maybe especially then. We found a way to survive, Admiral. Now we must find a way to live. Across Earth, life continued. Humans worked, loved, created, and died. The resurrection facilities hummed with quantum energy, ready to catch every falling consciousness. The tattoos updated, numbers climbing slowly but inevitably. Children played in parks, went to school, and learned to accept that death was just another part of growing up. The galaxy watched humanity from a distance, never quite understanding, never quite accepting what they had become. But no species ever attacked Earth again. The lesson had been learned. Some wars cannot be won. Some enemies cannot be defeated. And some sacrifices are so terrible that even victory becomes tragedy. In his retirement, Taman would sometimes look at the cherry blossom Minsu had given him and wonder about the boy. He would be 17 now, perhaps with a tattoo reading 15 or 20. Living a life punctuated by death and resurrection, growing up in a civilization where mortality was optional, but suffering was eternal, and Taman would feel grateful that his species had never been forced to make humanity's choice. That they could still die peacefully, permanently, finally. That death remained a door that closed, not a revolving gate that trapped people in an endless cycle. Humanity had survived. But Taman understood that survival and victory were not always the same thing. Sometimes the cost of winning was so high that both sides lost something essential. The cherry blossom remained in its case, a small reminder of a great truth. The galaxy's mightiest empire had learned that power. Technology and military force meant nothing when facing a species that had conquered death itself. And in conquering death, humanity had lost something that could never be resurrected, something that died a little more with every numbered tattoo, with every child who learned to treat death as routine. That something was innocence, and once lost it could never return.